to take you now to a place colloquially called The Do. And I'm going to be talking to Stephen Briggs now about his book, The Boy Who Could Tickle Clouds. Welcome to the studio, Stephen.
Alicia, thank you very much for having me in.
Well, I'm so excited because to have a little bit of WA in the studios here in Melbourne is very exciting. This is a great memoir and it starts in such a remote location. Please tell us about The Do.
Yeah, so Paraburdoo is on the edge of the Great Sandy Desert in the Pilbara region of Western Australia. And when I was 2, my parents, we emigrated. We were 10-pound poms, so we came out on the Fair Sky, which is now the Fair Star, which is the fun ship, which I think is quite hilarious considering it was. I'm sure it wasn't fun when we came, but we ended up. Dad was an electrician at the time, and he got a job working for this building company that was building this new mining town. It was sort of a frontier town really, because it was such an inhospitable, remote, and incredibly hot place. Like every day in summer is 40 plus, and often 45, 46, 48. It's really, and when we went there was no infrastructure at all. So I don't know how my mother did it. I mean, we were in white jumpsuits, and I think we hopped off the plane, and then we were just red within a few minutes, and that was her reality for the next however long. So yeah.
One of the pleasures, and of course the main characters in the book, is your dad, and I fell in love with your dad.
Oh, thank you.
And what's striking too is this is a memoir where it's a love story to both your parents, really, isn't it? Because your adoptive parents.
Yes.
But you speak of them so fondly. But just tell us first about your dad. He's a bit of a larrikin.
Well, Dad was an amazing guy because he had very little education, because they pretty much grew up in the 30s in the Great Depression in the north of England. And Dad joined the Royal Navy when he was about 15. He was involved in the Yangtze incident, which was, I think the Chinese, it's a long story, but there was a destroyer that was up the Yangtze, and the Dad was on another British boat that went up to try and save it because it had pretty much been scuttled. And there was basically they were shelled, and Dad won a medal for bravery, which I lost in a sandpit, which I feel terrible about to this day. But yeah, my dad was just this amazing guy. He'd lived in so many places, Iraq, Hong Kong. He'd just seen so much of the world. As a 16-year-old, 17-year-old boy, Sierra Leone he lived in.
Wow.
So he was just a really warm-hearted, kind man. And, I had the incredible good fortune to be taken out of an orphanage in England and be given a life by my parents. And, God, I thank them, every day since, which is really why I wrote this book, as a way of, sort of immortalising my father, I suppose.
Look, and as a mother of 2 boys, I was worried for you in this book because you get beaten up a bit. And I love that you come out because I can't imagine sending a son off to school who is, first weed on, and later it escalates as you go off to grammar school. But what was it like to be picked on, and how did you overcome it?
Well, I guess look, one of the themes, I guess, in the book is bullying. And I guess bullying, I'd say almost every single person in the world has experienced some form of bullying at some point. And I was always a really sensitive sort of kid that really took all that sort of stuff to heart. And I suppose, boarding school, for me, it made me. I was 12 years old and I had to stand on my own 2 feet. And you really, one minute you're a kid and the next minute, right, well, yes, you're in a boarding house and there's adults, but really it is Lord of the Flies-esque, and you have to find something within yourself, and for me it was gags. I just started cracking up. I had this I just had this ability to see things, perhaps because I was from the Do and I was in this kind of boys' boarding school, and it was all, you really were sort of the outsider. I mean, we all were, I guess we're all boarders, but really it couldn't have been more extreme, the sort of 2 worlds that were sort of colliding in front of me, I suppose.
And usually a book is about a boy and his dog, but this starts off a boy and his guinea pig. Yes. Tell us about Kimber.
Yeah. So Kimber was, I loved Kimber. He was this beautiful, angelic white guinea pig who always seemed so full of hope and was just very content. And really, I mean, it's 45 degrees in the shade. He's in a tea chest in the backyard. He might as well have been in a microwave oven. It can't have been too nice for him. But, you know, I was really, really fond of him. But sadly, as it mentions in my book, someone knocked him off when I was, you know, quite young. So we never got to the bottom of that.
Yeah, that's what I needed to know.
Yeah,
I wanted closure.
I don't know who killed Kimber, but it was very upsetting.
Now you go off to it's Perth Grammar,
which is Alicia. It's fictitious for. You know,
right, that's what I thought.
Yes, for litigation reasons.
Right.
No, look, I went to a school called Christchurch Grammar School, which was a fantastic school, and you know, really was a bit like Tom Brown's school day. The school that, I mean, where I went, we were in this boarding house that was condemned by the health department, and I arrived and they said, "You're very lucky. You're the last generation that's going to go through this school." And I mean, we had things like the fire escape was a tow rope tied to the end bed on the first floor. So if there was a fire, you threw it out the window, and then you'd have to go down, you know, sort of Tarzan style.
Goodness.
I mean, it was hilarious. It was a very ripe sort of you know, fairground. Really, it was brilliant.
So what do a bunch of boys do when they're away from their parents and they're full of hormones and hope?
Well, that's a very good question. There was there's a scene in the book where we go to a girls' social, and I mean, and it really, I mean, you know, I think I say in the book they go from, I'm paraphrasing myself, which is very bizarre, they go from a bunch of boys that would be happy to mate with a goat to a bunch of boys that would be happy to mate with a piece of Skylab's burnt out hull, which was something that one of the boys in the room claimed he owned. But yeah, you know, I mean, literally there were, you know, I mean, I don't want to be gross, but you know, people would hump pillows, and there was just
there's a lot of masturbation going on.
Well, in the book. In the
Sorry.
book, yes. I'm glad you said film, because I hope it lends itself
book.
to a film. If any producers are listening, I'm, you know, would very much. It is quite filmable, hopefully. And God, that landscape, it's just so vast and beautiful. And but yes, you know, it was pretty bizarre, the things that used to go on, you know, and in masturbation, obviously, but you're in a room full of, we're in dormitories of 12 kids, so I think everyone would just kind of hang around. I never had the guts myself. I thought I'll practice this at home when there's a tiny bit of privacy. But
practice?
Well, you know, have a crack at what it was all about, because everyone they would all talk about it so much. But I thought, I'm not going to be in a room of 12 people and you know, discover this secret. You know, as you do.
I'm on your side.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm with you here.
Yes.
Yep. But how did you find the camaraderie, or was it the closest you've ever had in your life?
Yeah, look, some of those guys are still my best friends, and I'm 45. I'm 46. God, in a couple of months, which is depressing. But merrily we roll along. Yeah, we're still really close, and you know, I guess you walk the first steps of being a man with these people, and you will, you know, consequently, even if you don't see them for 5 or 6 years, you see them for an afternoon, and you just pick up exactly where you were. It's quite beautiful, actually. It's lovely.
There's a moment in the book where I think you talk about the do, and you say that the lights could almost, and I'm paraphrasing, you know, light up the MCG for 3 years.
Yes.
Tell us a bit more about that landscape. Is it something you take with you? Is it something you long for? Because you grow more and more distant as the book goes on, of course.
Yes. Well, yeah. Well, he goes off to boarding school and he discovers girls, and I'm obviously talking about myself. And you discover all the things that sort of distractions, I suppose. Whereas the wonderful thing about Paraburdoo and the Pilbara, for anyone that's ever been there, it's just an incredibly truthful place, because ultimately, you know, my father had a friend who was lost for an afternoon and perished, you know, because it's so hot, and if you don't get out of the sun and you don't have water, you know, I mean, there's lots of stories about people drinking their own urine, and I mean, it's a very harsh place, but it's also incredibly beautiful. I used to have a motorbike when I was 12. I was very fortunate, and I used to say to imagine, because Alicia and I were just talking about the fact we both have kids at the same age, and imagine this as a parent now. I used to say to my mother, right, Mum, I'm on the motorbike. I'll be back in 2 hours, and I'm heading sort of due west, or I'd say out past Transmission Hill. And she'd say, oh, no, come back in an hour because I want to know if something's happened to you. I mean, if something had happened, an hour's not going to make any difference. You are stuffed. And and I think now with my parenting style, and I try to be as loose as you can be, but, I just think, God, it's just unthinkable that I'd let my boys go and do something like that. And, I was 12. And I remember once, although what amazing lessons you could learn in that time, because I remember once I was on the motorbike, I went over the handlebars and I really hurt myself quite badly. And I was lying there and I thought, well, you know what, mate, no one's coming and no one knows you're here. So you've got two choices. You either get up and ride it home if you can ride it, or walk if you can't, or you lie here and you're going to die. So make your choice. And I do feel for my children and their generation, because a lot of them are never, ever going to have that much latitude to actually be in a position where where they get to discover those things about themselves, because we, even though we try not to, you can't help but, kind of wrap them up a bit.
Well, I remember spending whole days out in paddocks and, you'd come back when the sun went down and that was it.
Yeah, and no one knew what you were doing. No. And as a result, you got to learn and live and just be, and your time was your own. I mean, God, I'm sounding like such a 45-year-old
back in our day.
Well, it's exactly right, isn't it? I mean, pre-Facebook, and another thing was you'd make an ass of yourself quite often when you were younger. But I feel now, like, if you make an ass of yourself and someone has a smartphone and they take a photo and then and then what happens 10 years later when you're at a job interview and someone, Mr. Briggs, okay, and they Google you and there's a shot of you with, I don't know, whatever you're doing, mounting a goat or whatever's going on, and there it is. Forever.
Respectfully, of course.
Well, yes, respectfully. No, the goat wasn't harmed.
No.
But I do wonder if there should be a 5-year rule where all those images and stuff after 5 years just, magically disappear or something, particularly for young people.
Well, people are talking about that. The book is The Boy Who Could Tickle Clouds, and I'm talking to Stephen Briggs. Now, this you've put out, you've self-published, which is interesting.
Yes.
And it's on iTunes as well, so you can get it. Where can you get a hard copy, and how do you get it online?
This is the amazing thing about the world we live in. I'll just say quickly, because I do have a habit of banging on. I've self-published because I'm 45, and the last publisher I sent it to had it for 6 months, which I think was actually a good thing. But then I thought, well, if it takes 5 publishers 6 months, I'll be 50. And I actually wrote this a long, long time ago, and it sat in the top drawer until my darling wife pushed me until finally I decided to publish it. And in answer to your question, it's on Amazon, and Amazon also has the paperback version. I mean, the world we live in, you literally go on and go, yes, I'll have one of those, please. A machine in America makes it for you, puts it in an envelope and posts it out to you. And it's usually within a week and a half, it's with you. Which I don't know if that's the most wonderful thing in the world. And, part of me, I think because I'm a little bit older and old school perhaps, I would be very happy if a publisher had picked it up. And because when you self-publish, there's a lot of, you just have to have this phenomenal sort of momentum that you have to keep generating and keep moving it along. And this book's had a really good run of publicity in Western Australia, and it's been reviewed very favourably, which I'm very, very thankful for. And it actually went to number 48 on iTunes on the bestsellers list in fiction and literature for a weekend. In fact, J.K. Rowling was 51 and I was 48, which I was very proud of, but only for a weekend. And then the publicity dies down a bit and it slows, and you just have to keep finding this momentum from somewhere. So, look, I'm glad it's out there, and I'm glad, I guess ultimately I'm getting emails from people I don't know saying how much it's moved them and how funny they found it. So from my point of view, that makes me regardless of whether it's selling or not, I mean, that's ultimately, as a writer, I guess that's what you want. That's what I want. Yeah, you want it to be read.
And Judith Lucy says that you're a natural storyteller and one of the funniest people I know. So that's great praise from a wonderful woman. The book is The Boy Who Could Tickle Clouds, and I've been speaking with Stephen Briggs. Thank you so much for coming in and talking with me.
Alicia, thanks so much for having me.
A pleasure. And we'll be speaking about Clutopia with David Astle coming up shortly. He will boggle your brain.